Hello, good day everyone, and welcome to our second class in this design bootcamp. I am your tutor, Muhammad Sadis, and then today we are supposed to be looking at graphic design softwares, Photoshop in particular. But then, before then, we promised to have a recap of our last class for those of us that missed the class. So this is going to be a brief class, a brief recap of what we've treated earlier. So basically, what we treated in our first class was the introduction to design. We treated introduction to design. So we look at the concept of design, where we said design is more like a process of imagining, planning, the creation of object system, buildings, etc. So what this is saying is that we are just trying to tell you that design is a process that deals with creating solutions. So at the end, when you hear design, you should just think about solutions. So what is graphic design? Graphic design is just simply the definition of design as we've taken earlier. You just add graphics to it, which will practically give you the definition we have on the screen. So we said graphic design is the art and practice that involves strategic combination and manipulation of information in order to present it in an effective communication. So this is trying to tell you that as a graphic designer, you are going to be interpreting your client's information. Your client is going to come with informations. So he's going to give you informations, and then you from your own side, you are going to design it and transform that information he has given you in the form of a brief into a visually pleasing design that could be easily understood by all. So we have elements of design. So basically, elements of designs are like the building blocks you use in design. Let's say you want to build a house. You need to get the blocks, you need to get the cement and all other stuff. So likewise your design. Before you design, you need design elements. So they are basically components or parts which can be isolated and defined in a visual design work of art. So there are 7 basic elements of design which we can see from the screen. The first one is point, right? And then line, shape, form, space, color, and texture. So point is the simplest element of design. You can see it from the screen. We don't need to go through all the slide. A point is just a point. So what a point does is it gives focus or create a sense of direction. Let me give you an instance. This is a blank page. I have a blank Photoshop file. You can see there is nothing for your eyes to focus on. But let's say I create something, let's say this. So you can see, let's say this is our point. We've created a point in our design. So that means you can see it now, right? So that is a point. And then the next design element we have is line. So line is just like a combination of many points, right? And then we said a line is a form with width and length, but it does not have any depth, right? So just think of this, what we've just created. This, let's take this as a point or as a dot. What if you have 2 of it? You see? You add another one. You add another one. If you keep adding, you get a line, right? So basically that is a line. You can see this is a vertical line, and then you can have a horizontal line looking like this. And then you can have diagonal lines going in different directions. So all these are elements you can use in your design to try as much as you can to pass information. As you can see from the examples we have here, you can see the concept of line has been used here to show a sense of movement, right? From this road, it's showing you the direction where the car is following. And then you can see from this second example that you can see various lines, diagonal lines moving in different angles and directions. That is just the designer trying to pass a message using lines in his design. So we also have shape. You remember we said this is a line, right? This is a line. So imagine if you have lines going in different directions and then they form an enclosure that will give you a shape. You can see we have a shape. A shape has a boundary, right? You can see the four corners of this shape. So it has a boundary. And then your shape can be outlined like this, or it can be filled. You can see this one has full color. So you can use shape, we have different shape, rectangles, name them. And then you also have organic shape. That is shape from natural, from living things or things from nature you can see around. You can see this book cover. You can see that basically the designer used shapes. You can see circles. You can see a rectangle here. You can see another, other circles here, and then you can see semicircles or you can see semicircle here. And then he just gave them different color to try to create a design and pass his information. So from shape we have form. We have form, yes, and then for form we said you can see from the images, form is just like you are having a three-dimensional shape, right? You have your rectangle, and then you decide to make it a box. So that means you are creating a form. You can see from here, this typical example, this is a box, right? So it is formed from a rectangle. Let's say you have four squares. It is formed from a square, sorry. So let's say you have 4 squares, placing them opposite each other. You can see that it's going to give you a shape, a form. So it is very, very important. Give meaning to your design. You can see in a three-dimensional look, and then message in your design. And then we also have, like I said, we also have other forms of other elements of design, like the color and texture. So you can see texture is how something feels, right? When you touch, maybe you want to give an impression that something is smooth. You have to use a smooth texture. Or you want to give an impression that something is rough. You use a rough texture. So, and then you have color. We all know color, right? So you can use color also in your design. It is a very, very important design element which you can use to pass messages across your audience. So with time, we are going to be looking at all these elements in details. We cannot treat just color. If we pick color, we can spend hours discussing about color. So, but like I said, this is just a recap of what we've treated earlier. And then we moved on to discuss principles of designs. Having discussed elements of designs, we need to also look at principles of design. And we said principles of design are just like a set of rules you need to use while creating your design. You have already studied your elements, right? So what are the rules you need to use to be able to effectively use those elements to create a design? So these are what we call principles of design. So we have multiple principles, or we have many principles of design. But then let's look at a few of them. We have balance, like we said. Balance refers to the right use of objects or elements in a design to create an impression of equality or balance. You can see from these two designs, or from all the examples we have here, everything is looking balanced, right? So that is because the designer has used balance to create a visually pleasing design. So we have two types of balance, which is symmetrical and asymmetrical. Symmetrical balance is when you have the same thing, almost the same element you use on one side of the design to be on the other side. You can see from this first example, almost we have the same element, a square and then lines. And from the other side, we have the same thing. But for the asymmetrical design, you can see two shapes, right? A square and a circle. But then they are not placed at the same height, right? They are placed at different heights. But then you can still feel that balance in the design. So that is balance. And then we have contrast. It just refers to, like, contrast just means difference, the difference between something, right? So you can use contrast in your design to emphasize or highlight key elements in your design. So you can use color, texture, size, shapes to demonstrate contrast. Just take, for example, here in the first example, we have two squares, but then the first one has they both have different colors. That is to show you that even though they are squares of equal size, but they are not the same because they have different colors. Here we also have circles of varying shape. One is bigger. That is to show you that there is a contrast. Both of them are cycles, right? But then one cycle is bigger than the other. So also with the text we have here, if you can see, some texts are bigger than the other. That is to show you that the designer is trying to create a contrast between this text that he has in his design. And then we have white space or negative space, which we say is the unused space in your design. So for you to be able to achieve a visually pleasing design, you need to be able to use white space. You can see from the example we have here, this first text, you can see you can barely read it because there is no enough space between the lines we have in the design. Whereas this second example, it is clearly readable because of the space. There is a larger space left between each line on the text. And then we also have emphasis. Emphasis simply means to give importance to something. You can see we have squares, 4 squares, but then one is given a different color. That is to show you that the designer is trying to emphasize or trying to show that there is something about this square. And then we have rhythm. Rhythm simply means like flow, how your design flow, how you use the elements of design to create a visually pleasing design. And then we have unity. Unity is when you combine all the principles of design. You use composition, you use rhythm, you use balance, emphasis. So when you bring all of them together, if your design doesn't look one, that means there is no unity in your design, right? So there are other principles of design that include repetition, pattern, movement, proportion, harmony, and variety. We are all going to look at them as we go into the design proper. So for today's class, I sent a link for us to install Photoshop, and I assume that everybody must have installed Photoshop. So we are going to look at the interface of Photoshop. So this is my interface, but then I think this is not the correct interface. So let me see if I can get a default interface so that it will look the same as yours. Yeah. So when you open Photoshop for the first time, it is going to show you this screen. But then for your own, in your own case, you are not going to see these works because you are just opening your Photoshop for the first time. But then you are going to see this create, and then you are going to see open, right? So let's hit create new. So once you hit create, you are going to see this panel, which is like trying to show you to set up your page. Just imagine you're an artist, right? An artist needs to get his canvas before he starts painting. So also as a designer, when you get your software, you need to open it and then set up your canvas. How big do you want it to be? What is the size of the design? So there are plenty sizes here which you can choose from by default. And then when you go to print, you can see A4, A5, A6, which are like default sizes we all know. So all these are sizes you can explore. But then for this very class and for the experiments we are going to be having now, I want you to go to this place which is preset details. So it's showing you the details of the page you are trying to set up. Here you put the name of your page. So let's name it introduction. So we have that, and then this is the width and height of your design. If you want to change the dimension, you click on this drop down, and then you have inches, centimeters, millimeters, points, and all of that. So you choose what you want to do depending on what you actually want to do. So for resolution, we use 300, and then for the color mode, we have a lot of them: bitmap, grayscale, RGB, CMYK, and the rest. But then the major ones we use is the RGB and the CMYK. So you use RGB if you are trying to design for mobile. Maybe you are designing a flyer that will only be sent on phones. So you use RGB. Whereas if, let's say, you are designing a flyer or you are designing a poster, right, you use CMYK. So we are just trying to experiment. So let's use RGB, and then let's hit on create. So you can see it will create your canvas for you like this. So this is your canvas. You can see the name here, introduction. And then here you can see your toolbar. These are the tools you are going to be using. These are your marker. Let's say an artist, these are your marker, your paintbrush, your colors. You find everything here. This is your toolbar. So, and then here, okay, if you are setting this for the first time, I would like you to right click here and close this tab because you don't actually need it. Right click again on these libraries and then close it, and then you'll be left with adjustment. So adjust your screen so that you have a larger area like this.